articles of with 1,300 citations. We are very lucky to have you, sir, and we are really eagerly waiting for your session. And right now, sir is going to deliver his lecture on data science approach to Jyotisha Shastra. Please be attentive. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. A very good morning, and I'm very glad to be here. I thank CDAC for inviting me to deliver this lecture. I also apologize for not being able to come there in person. After COVID, I am having some health issues and I am unable to travel, hence this online session. Now, this talk is about, just one second, let me make it full screen. So, a data science approach to Jyotish Shastra. So, as many of you know, Jyotish Shastra is Indian astronomy as well as astrology is one of the most prominent Indian knowledge systems. It's considered one of the 6 Vedangas. So Vedas have 6 Angas, and Jyotish Shastra is one of the Vedangas. Originally, it was called Ganita. For example, Aryabhatta refers to it only as Ganita. Now, in today's terminology, we have translated Ganita as mathematics and this as Jyotish Shastra. There are many well-known ancient texts in Sanskrit in this field, and I will be using some of them in this work. Now, why take a data science approach? See, conventional astronomy is considered a branch of physics. It's modern science. But here we are not so much interested in calculating an eclipse or sending a spaceship to Mars. This is a different approach where there is a tremendous potential to gain new insights. So Jyotish Shastra has been studied in traditional ways with manual calculations. But now we have a new possibility of understanding some of the key concepts in Jyotish Shastra in a new way by applying this data science methodology. So what I will be showing today essentially has 3 parts. One is how to generate large data sets for studying Jyotish Shastra. How do I get large enough data sets for understanding some of the key concepts in Jyotish Shastra? And the second is trying to understand some of the configurations and some of the special, arrangements that are given in Jyotish Shastra in terms of statistics and probability. So, for example, if I'll be showing later in this talk, if someone has a Raja Yoga, they say, I will tell you what is the probability of having that Raja Yoga. And it's possible to do such analysis to understand Jyotish Shastra in an entirely new way compared to the traditional way of learning Jyotish Shastra. And also using some of the tools like computer animations to understand some intricate concepts in Jyotish Shastra. I hope to illustrate some of them over the next hour so that you can also appreciate what the benefit of taking this new data science approach. If there are any clarifications needed at any point, please feel free to ask. Otherwise, we can restrict the questions and answers to the end of the session. Now, the general approach of data science is empirical. That is, we don't try to build a scientific model or a causal model, but we collect large data sets and analyze the data sets empirically and to arrive at insights, to understand patterns, to recognize trends and things like that. And largely it has been applied in various other fields such as business and marketing and scientific simulation and many other areas. Here, one of the important things to know is if you don't understand the domain, it's not possible to get meaningful results. So simply being knowing statistics and probability and data analytics is not good enough to apply it to a domain like Jyotish Shastra. At the same time, just the knowledge of Jyotish Shastra or deep knowledge of astronomy is also not sufficient. One needs to be good in both to be able to understand and appreciate how to effectively and meaningfully apply these newer methods of analysis to an ancient field of study, a knowledge system like Jyotish Shastra. So much of the work I have done is using some of the modern programming tools like the R language for data analytics, Python, PHP, scalable vector graphics, and things like that. Now, till now, I have not found any need to use the new kind of AI. So, the LLM based AI, the generative AI that everyone is talking about, there has been no need to use it, and I am also fairly skeptical, doubtful of how effective it will be, because a large amount of the content on Jyotish Shastra, astrology that is there on the web, on the internet, is not very accurate. Right, a lot of it is focusing too much on predicting the stock market and elections and cricket results and all kinds of crazy things for which Jyotish Shastra was never meant to be applied. So whether AI will be useful or not is an open question, but I have not applied the new kind of AI in this work. So let us first begin by looking at where do we get the data? Where is the source of data? So my primary source of data is from NASA. So NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory has released data about planetary positions. So if I want to know where is the moon currently in Tirupati, I can know it very, very accurately from this data. And this has been released for several hundred years of data. Very, very accurate data is available. Now, this data has been packaged into what is called the Swiss Ephemeris library or package, which is available in various programming languages and so on. It's quite complex. It's not easy to use, but it's the best source of data that's available. In fact, many of the online and mobile apps that give you the panchang and horoscope and all of that are using this. Now, for this study, I have taken the data for 2 centuries, that is 1900 to 2099, which amounts to a total of 73,050 days. So we have data, say for one location, we fix the location as Bangalore, and for each day or any instant of time, you can get the accurate positions of all the grahas in this from this system. So just to show you a glimpse of what the data itself looks like. So this is you're not supposed to, it's not expected that you read this or see this. Just to show you that it's just a lot of numbers giving the longitude of each graha in degrees and various other parameters. Now, I have built some applications of this. This is more for fun and practical use more than any scientific study. So one of the things I did was generated the Panchanga, traditional Panchanga, up to year 2099. So generally they publish the Panchanga only for the upcoming Samvatsara next year. But it's possible now to generate it. So I have generated it all the way up to 2099. So that's available at this website, astrolytics.co.in. It's a purely not non-profit. It's a hobby project for me. So I have released it there. For example, if you are all of this can be computed from the data in NASA. So if you wanted to know when will be the Vaikuntha Ekadashi festival on in the year 2050, you know that it is going to be on January 3rd, because all of this can be calculated. All the festival dates, everything can be calculated once we have this data. And the list of festivals and other things. And for example, there is a tradition of celebrating around the age 80 years or 81 years, a person completes 1,000 full moons. So that is called Sahasra Chandra Darshana. So there's a lot of debate about how to calculate it, traditionally and so on. But there is an app here which will give you, if you give your date of birth, it will tell you exactly on which day you will see the thousandth full moon. So any such thing is possible once you have this data. But those are all, as I said, for practical use or for fun, not really considered any research. Now, what I will do next is show you how to apply data analytics methods from this data to understand some of the ancient ideas and concepts in Jyotish Shastra. So we'll first begin with the idea of something called Rashmi Phala. So Parashara Muni talks about something called Rashmi Phala. So for each day, there is a way to calculate, in a phase, the aggregate sum of the strength of each planet, each graha. And Parashara Muni has given us the formula for that. But what exactly is this Rashmi Phala? Why is it there? Are we using it? How does it vary across days? So the way to understand it from a data science point of view is to calculate it for every day. So I went ahead and calculated this for 120 years, 1900 to 2021, every day. So that's a total of about 44,559 days. And now you can calculate the statistical properties of this Rashmi Phala. So for example, we know that the minimum value that has ever occurred is 2.2. The maximum value that has ever occurred is 52, 52.8. And the mean value or average value is around 24. And if you see how it is distributed, what we call probability distribution, statistical distribution, there have been only 48 days in this entire 120 years where it has been, says Rashmi Phala has had a value less than 5. There have been only 19 days where it has had a value above 50. So if you plot all of that in what is called a histogram, so this is the histogram for Rashmi Phala. So those who know some statistics will immediately recognize that this is what we call a normal distribution, or it's a bell curve as they say. So in nature, a lot of things have this normal distribution. For example, if you similarly plot the frequency distribution of the height of a person or a weight of a person, IQ of a person, anything, usually it is normally distributed. So this is another natural phenomenon, Rashmi Phala, which we now know is normally distributed. Now, if you try to see how it has changed over the years, so this is the x-axis here is the year from 1900 to 2020, and the yearly average Rashmi Phala. Now, you will see that it is not the same in each year. There is some kind of visually we can see some kind of a pattern, but we can't say is there any cycle in this. So if one were interested in this, you could apply some other methods called time series analysis and so on to figure out whether there is any cyclical pattern in this Rashmi Phala. You can also then correlate it with various other parameters. For example, if you correlate Rashmi Phala against the month, that is the English calendar month, you will see that its value is highest in April and lowest in October and November. So is that just the seasons then? Is it just showing the seasons? Not quite. So if you plot it against our traditional month, that is Masa, so you will see that Chaitra Masa it is highest, and Ashwini and Kartik Masa it is lowest. So the x-axis here is the 12 Masas, and the y-axis is again the mean value of the Rashmi Phala in that Masa. So just from a programming and data science point of view, these are not easy to do because all your computer programming languages and packages will support English month. If you want to do it against Chaitra Masa, Vaishakha Masa and all of that, then you need to program all of that. You have to have the data to figure out when the Chaitra Masa began in each year and when the next Masa began in each year and so on. So it is there's a lot of work involved, but it's interesting to see the results. Similarly, if I plot it against nakshatra, that is Chandra nakshatra, so the nakshatra of that day, and then you will see that it is highest in Rohini nakshatra, the fourth one, and lowest in Vishaka nakshatra. Now, those who know a little bit of Jyotish Shastra will immediately see this is because moon is exalted. Uchasthana is Rohini nakshatra, and Nichasthana, debilitation, is in Vishaka nakshatra. That pattern has come out very clearly. So you can do all these kinds of analysis to understand such a concept as Rashmi Phala. How we use it, whether we use it to do any predictions, is a different matter. So we will not get into that part here. So it's just an illustration to show if we have this data and there is a concept that Parashara Muni has mentioned called Rashmi Phala, we can now analyze it in this way to understand how it changes, how it behaves, and what it could mean, and how we could use it. Now, moving on, suppose I wanted to understand some other concepts. Essentially, I will get to a concept called Ekargala. So, Ekargala is not easy to understand by just reading the Sanskrit shlokas, or you can understand what they are saying, but how does it actually behave? So, when does it appear? And this is something that they use in fixing a marriage, wedding muhurta and things like that. So one of the ideas was, can we show all the planetary positions, essentially the kundali or the horoscope, as a clock, in a clock form, right? So for example, this is how it is shown in this. If you go to that website for any day, you can pick that. So it shows the positions of all the different grahas in a 360-degree clock. Just like how we have 12 hours in a clock, here there are 12 rashis and the corresponding positions along with their degree, minutes, everything is shown in this. And in the center, it gives you the what we call in when we do any puja or anything, we talk about Kala Sankirtana, Desha Kala Sankirtana in Sankalpa. So that entire thing is generated by this program here, because all of it can be calculated once you know the time, location, and the positions of the all the planets. So what day it was, what masa, rutu, paksha, nakshatra, everything is calculated and shown for you. Now this itself is just for visualizing. My interest was how does it change over time. So it's now possible to animate or create a video of how things change over time. So first we will look at something called Mahapata. So there are two kinds of Vyatipata and Vaidruti Mahapata. So how do we understand that using this kind of a notion? So I will have to get in a little bit into Jyotish Shastra, and my apologies if all of you already know this, but there may be some people in the audience who may not be familiar with this. So it's also a way to demystify some of these traditional concepts using modern mathematics. So what we call Tithi is in mathematics theta moon minus theta sun divided by 12. That is, theta here refers to the longitude. So the moon's longitude minus the sun's longitude divided by 12 gives you the current running Tithi. Similarly, nakshatra is nothing but the longitude of the moon divided by 13.33. So these are very simple mathematical concepts. There is no real mystery about them. But in our Jyotish Shastra, there is one of the Panchangas, the 5 Angas of Panchanga, is called yoga. So this is not the Patanjali kind of yoga. It's a very, very unique and very interesting concept. Quite unintuitive or counterintuitive, because we're adding the position of the sun to the position of the moon. So it's the sum of the longitudes of moon and sun, and that is divided again by 13.33 to give us 27 different yogas. Just like we have 27 nakshatras for the moon, we have 27 yogas. And then there is a concept called Yoga Nakshatra, which is the 7th nakshatra from yoga. So you add 6 to that and you get the Yoga Nakshatra. So how all this behaves is very, very interesting. Now, all of this is used in the concept of defining what is Vyatipata. So the original definition, this is ancient text, much older than even Aryabhatta or Varaha Mihira and so on. So they define it as Chandrarkayoha Kranti Samyam Tatra Vyatipato Bhinnayane Golaikye. So essentially, if you see it as a circle and the position of the sun and the position of the moon, there are two kinds of variations called Ayana and Kranti. Kranti is declination in English. So Ayana we know, Uttarayana, Dakshinayana. So when they are in a symmetrical position, that means if the sun and moon are at either end of any of these vertical lines here, the moon is at the top or sun is at the bottom or the other way around, then what happens is the sum of their longitudes will be 180 degrees. For example, if sun is at 0 degree, moon at 180 degree, right, we call that Purnima, that is your full moon, or the other way around. But if sun is at 45 degree and moon is at 135 degree, in any of these symmetrical positions, the sum of their longitudes will be 180 degrees. That is called Vyatipata. So in the Sanskrit definition that is given is Chandra Arkayoho. So for the moon and the sun, Kranti Samyam. Kranti should be equal. That is, they should be equally to the right side of the middle line or left side of the middle line. And Bhinna Ayana Gola Aikya. So that means Ayana should be different. One is above, the other is below. And Gola Aikya, they should both be on the right hand side or left hand side. So both should be blue or both should be red. Right? So that is mathematically, it simply means that the sum of the longitudes of sun and moon should add up to 180 degrees or close to that. That is the definition of Vyatipata. Right? There is another concept called Vaidhuti. It is just instead of vertical lines there, you have horizontal lines here. And in this case, the sum of their longitudes will be 360 degrees instead of 180 degrees. Now, this is defined as Chandrarkayoha Kranti Samyam, same as before, right? Kranti should be equal. Vaidrutihi Samayane Gola Bhedecha. So, Ayana should be same in this case. That's why we get horizontal lines. It should be equally above the horizontal or below. And Gola Bedhe, they should be on either side of one should be on the left and the other should be on the right. So these Vaidruti and Vyatipata are called Mahapatas. They are not good times when there is such a symmetry. And by the way, for those who know, we have to use the Sayana longitudes for this, not the Nirayana longitude for this particular calculation. Now, when does it occur, right? How does it occur? So what this video will show now is for the entire year 2024, right? So as the sun and the moon are moving, whenever that such a symmetry occurs, there is a red line that it shows. So in the center is the date. So now we are in February. Each day is animated as 1 second. So it's easy to create such tools to visually see when that happens. So whenever there is that symmetry, you get these lines, these red lines. Right? So you may be wondering why it is not horizontal or vertical as it was in the previous diagram. So these red lines are appearing at some slant, at some angle, right? That is because of what we call ayanamsha or precession of the equinox. So currently around this time, 2024 or this year, ayanamsha is around 24 degrees. So that is why these angles are actually tilted at 24 degree angle, and that's the reason why we have to use the tropical or Sayana longitudes for this, not the Nirayana or the sidereal longitudes. So it is just an illustration to show that now we can generate these tools and create these animations to explain what is there in the traditional Indian knowledge system such as Jyotish Shastra. So this will go on and show you in 360 seconds, it will run through the entire year. So similarly, if one wants to see how the Vakra, the retrograde motion of Shani or Saturn happens, you can easily animate that over a long period of time, 60 years or 30 years, and show that how it actually works using these tools. So this is simply a Python program which has generated this, and the screen is captured in a video format. So now let's come to this difficult concept of Ekargala. So Ekargala is defined as sun and moon being equidistant from the Yoga Nakshatra. So that is, yoga is sum of the longitude of sun and moon. Yoga Nakshatra is the seventh nakshatra from yoga. And the sun and moon, if they are symmetrical with respect to that Yoga Nakshatra, we say there is Ekargala. So when does it occur? How often does it occur? Right? So it turns out that it almost always occurs when the Yoga Nakshatra is Purvashada or Uttarashada. That is, it means the range of the angles should be 253 degrees 20 minutes to 280 degrees. That's what we call Purvashada and Uttarashada. Only there it happens. Why? You can actually prove it mathematically, because there are only two variables here, the sun's position and the moon's position, theta sun and theta moon. From that I have defined yoga and yoga nakshatra and now this symmetry. So you can solve a set of simultaneous equations and prove that these are the only range of values for which it can happen. And these correspond to, in terms of the traditional yogas in the Panchanga, these translate to what are called Vyaghata and Harshana yogas. So Ekargala dosha can only occur in those yogas. So if you plot that, right, so this is for the year 2024, whenever there was that Ekargala dosha, so this just the black and red circles are the sun and moon. And they have the certain symmetry whenever there is that Ekargala, and that is shown by drawing the blue line from them. They're all tilted at some angle once again. So if you extend this and plotted this for the entire decade, 10 years, 2020 to 2030, whenever Ekargala happens, you will see that they're all symmetrical with respect to this dotted red line. Right? There is a dotted red line going from the top right to the bottom left. And all of the Ekargala configurations are such that sun and moon are symmetrical with respect to that. Now, this line is basically at the what we call the Jyeshtamula Gandanta. So it is at the boundary between Dhanur Rashi and Makar Rashi, which is the transition from Jyeshta to Mula. Now this Jyeshta Mula Gandanta, that is sun and moon being symmetrical to that, is what we call Ekargala. We can make that conclusion by doing this kind of an analysis. Now why is that significant? Because first of all, they have called it Mula Nakshatra. Mula means source or origin. And now there is actually astronomical evidence to claim that that is the direction of the center of the Milky Way galaxy. As you know, our solar system is a part of the Milky Way galaxy, and they say the center of the Milky Way galaxy is in that direction. And so whether our ancient rishis knew this or not, it's very, very interesting that Jyotish Shastra has a concept like Ekargala, which is essentially looking for sun and moon symmetry, Ravi Chandra symmetry with respect to that axis, which is pointing towards the center of our galaxy itself. All right. So now in the next part, we are going to understand the concept of Raja Yoga. So if someone has a Raja Yoga, then they are supposed to be very, they will be very famous, very wealthy, very successful, in general have a very good life. Now, what is the probability of that, or what is the chance of someone having Raja Yoga? That kind of an analysis was not possible in traditional ways because all calculations had to be done manually. Now, there are 8 billion people on this planet. If it turns out that the probability is 25%, right, that is how every fourth person has Raja Yoga, then that is not a very meaningful concept. And this is the reason why many the so-called horoscope predictions that you get in newspapers and magazines are all cannot be accurate because they are only dividing 8 billion people into 12 categories. You're an Aries or a Taurus or whatever. There are almost a billion other people in the same category. So how can you make any prediction, or in terms of statistical validity, the probability will be too high. So where do we get the data set for this? That's the biggest question. Ideally, I would like to get the actual birth details of a million people, at least several lakh people, and use that to do the analysis. But all efforts were made over the last 10 years or so. It's not easy to get real accurate data of real people's horoscopes. So suppose we programmatically, or by writing a program, generate horoscopes. So what I have done is I've written a Python program which computes a horoscope for every hour, every day for 180 years. So for some reason I have taken 1904 to 2083, and every day there are 24 hours. So generate 24 possible horoscopes, assuming that that is the time of birth. So you get 1.5 million horoscopes this way, 15 lakh 77,880 horoscopes. And each one has a lot of data that is generated. So about 103 columns. So from any data science point of view, this is big data. 1.5 million rows and 103 columns. It's a very large matrix, a very large data set. Now, is this valid? Is it meaningful? It is meaningful if human birth is uniformly distributed, right? That is, the time of birth. There should not be a case that nobody was born on some days or some times, and a lot of people were born on the same day or the same time. Does it happen like that? Again, we don't have data, right? So in India, it's very difficult to get data. Fortunately, the US American health data is available about all human births that happened in that country. So if you take the year 2023, 2.67 million babies were born in America, and we know the exact time of birth for all of them. They have recorded it very systematically. They have not they have anonymized it, in the sense you don't know the location or date or name of the person or any of that, but there is a lot of accurate data available about the time of birth. Now if you plot that for natural births, right, it shows almost no variation, right? So this is the horizontal axis. X-axis here is time of the day, from 0 to 24, basically, from midnight. So what is written as 500 there is 5 a.m. What is written as 1000 there is 10 a.m. 1500 is 3 p.m. 20 is 8 p.m. and so on. So on an average, every hour, about 40, 50,000 babies are born. That is the overall for the entire year. There is a slight increase during the daytime, and speaking to some doctors, they said it is because of the change in temperature and activity during the day. There is a higher chance of labor getting induced and natural birth happening during daytime than nighttime. So it kind of gives us an indication that births are happening uniformly across all hours of the day. So we need not really worry about any particular hour being more popular or more populated than other hours of the day. On the other hand, if you do the same thing for cesarean births, No, the scheduled C-section kind of births, the pattern is very, very different. Most people in America born during using cesarean method are born between 8 and 9 a.m. And then it's actually the working hours of the doctors. You can even see a dip in the lunch hour and evening dinner time and so on. So, which means from this analysis, we can conclude that Jyotish Shastra, the way whatever prediction methodology is there in Phalat Jyotisha, she is not meaningful for caesarean births because this is not the actual natural time of birth. It is what is artificially induced based on the working hours of the doctors and so on. So, as you know, if the time changes, then the lagna and so many other things can change, and the entire, for example, the Parashara method of Phalat Jyotisha will not be applicable in such cases. So, anyway, if we take only the natural births, then it is okay to consider the kind of data set that I have generated because it is assuming that human birth is uniformly distributed across the 24 hours of a day. And even across days, there is hardly any day, there is no day when no human being is born. Almost the same number of births are happening on a daily basis if you look at birth and birth records. So, as such, it is a valid data set. Now I will illustrate two or three predictions, two or three rules given by Parashara Muni and find out the probability of such a thing occurring for Raja Yoga. So in this text called Lagu Parashari, there are 42 slokas, and the last two slokas, 41 and 42, give us a very interesting configurations for Raja Yoga. So what this one is saying is Lagna Karmadhinetara Vanyonyashraya Samstitau Raja Yoga Viti Proktam Vikyato Vijayi Bhavet. So this is called Raja Yoga. Raja Yoga iti Proktam. And the person having that will become Vikhyata and Vijayi, very successful and very famous. What should be the configuration? Lagna karma adhinetarau anyonyashraya samstitau. So Lagna is the first house, ascendant. Karma is the 10th house. Right? Lagna and Karma, the adhipatis, adhinetara of those two houses should have anyonyashraya. That means, right? So the first, in English they call it first house lord and things like that. So Lagnadipati or Lagnesha should be in the 10th house, Karmasthana, and Karmadipati should be in the first house. So the question is, how often does it occur? So if it's a very frequent thing, that means a lot of people on this planet, a lot of people will have Raja Yoga. Then it's not very meaningful. So if you now analyze this for the 1.57 million possible horoscopes over these 180 years, it happens only 8,500 times. Or in other words, the probability of this type of Raja Yoga is 0.0054 or 0.54%, about 5 in 1,000, right? Just about 5 in 1,000. The next configuration given is very similar to that, except Lagna is replaced by Dharma. Dharma karma dhinetara vanyonyashraya samsthitau Raja Yoga vidhi proktam vikyato vijayi bhavet. So here, Dharma refers to the ninth house. Ninth and 10th houses should have Anyonyashraya. Whereas in the earlier case, it was 1 and 10. Here it is 9 and 10. So again, if we do the probability analysis for this, this happens a little more, about 14,000 times out of the 1.57 million, or 0.0092 or 0.92%. Now, as you might think, 1% is close to 1%. That is too high. How can 1% of the people have something called Raja Yoga? So there are several other things to consider. Right? So one is this. When I say so many times, a lot of it happens in the same day or same set of consecutive days. So if you analyze the dates in which it occurred, it will be much less. So a few consecutive hours in that day, it might have happened and things like that. Well, we need to look at that more carefully. In addition, Parashara often talks about something called itarair aprasakta. So the real effect of this will not be the same for everyone who has this configuration. It depends on something called it should not be bothered by others. Itaraihi aprasakta means not bothered, not somehow muddled or affected by other grahas. Now, that is much more complex to analyze. So, if we take these half a percent or 1% of the cases which have this kind of Raja Yoga, and then you have to analyze those kundalis carefully, figure out in which case it's a pure configuration, in which case there is some other unfriendly graha co-located there, or in an unfriendly house, or there is a bad drishti. There are so many ways in which it can be bothered. So if you see that, the probability will be even smaller. It's a so in fact what Parashara Muni has given us are in fact very very rare configurations that are not very common when you consider all the people on this planet, which means it is more likely to be, it's more feasible, more practical, or at least statistically valid. So, just to show how more complex things are, before I conclude, I want to take up one more, even more complex configuration. This is given in Brihat Parashara Hora Shastra. So, this is similar to that but more complex. It says, Lagneshe panchame bhave panchameshe cha lagnake पुत्रात्मकारकौ विप्रा लग्ने च पंचमे स्थिते स्वोच्चे स्वांशे स्वभे वापि शुभग्रह निरीक्षिते महाराजाख्य योगोत्र जातः ख्यातः सुखान्वितः. So this is an even more special, even more extraordinary thing called Maharaja Yoga is defined here, where Jataha, the one born in that configuration, will again become Khyata, very famous, and Sukhanvitaha, will have a wonderful, happy life. So, what are the requirements for this? Lagneshe Panchame Bhave. So, there it was 1 and 10 or 9 and 10. Here, Parashara Muni is saying the Lagnadipati, the Lord of the first house, should be in the fifth house, and the fifth one should come back to the first house. So it is similar to the previous ones in the sense instead of 1 and 10, it is 1 and 5. But there is an additional requirement, which is Putrakaraka and Atmakaraka should also have this Anyonyashraya. So what is this Putrakaraka and what is Atmakaraka? And then there are further requirements about Swa Uche, so Uchasthana, that's exalted. Swamshe, so it should be in the own house or own Rashi. Swabhe, so all these things, are important for this. So how do we, and Shubhagraha Nirikshite, so it should have the aspect of drushti of an auspicious graha, Shubhagraha. So many, many requirements for this Maharaja Yoga to occur. So the question that interests me is, what is the probability of someone having Maharaja Yoga? Now, so it's the same thing is stated here in if you take, so this was analyzed for 200 years, 365 days, 12 lagnas per day will give you half of the previous 1.5 million that we had, or 8,76,600 possible combinations of lagna and date, right, over 200 years. This occurs only 459 times in those 200 years, or roughly once, about twice a year. But that is just the basic configuration, not all those additional constraints. So, for example, we will understand, just take a few minutes to understand what exactly is this second condition of Atmakaraka and Putrakaraka. So, sorry. So, there is a way of, you must have heard of something called Navamsha and so on. Amsha simply means the mathematically it's the modulus operator. So you take the longitude of any graha and apply mod 30, that will give you is amsha. Essentially, how far has it traversed within that 30 degrees of a Rashi. So if it's zero amsha means it's at the beginning of the Rashi. 30 means it's at the end of the Rashi. 15 means it's exactly in the middle of the Rashi, and so on. Now, if you compare the amsha of all the grahas in a particular or particular kundali, particular configuration, Atmakaraka is the name given to whichever graha has the highest amsha, whichever is most advanced in whichever rashi it is present. Putrakaraka is the sixth highest amsha, right? So it is not is not even the next one, the first highest one and the sixth highest one. Now it is essentially this. You can see it as a geometric transformation. It's a fantastic idea that Jyotish Shastra has given us. You are essentially doing circular geometry here. So you have divided 360 degrees into 12 parts, each part of 30 degrees. Further, we are dividing each of those parts into 9 amshas, 9 navamshas, and those navamshas are now rotated, right? So if I have, so that means the first navamsha of Mesha Rashi will stay in Mesha itself, and second one will go to the next Vrishabha, third one will go to, and so on. And the first navamsha of Vrishabha Rashi will come to Makara Rashi. So it's a very interesting way of doing a geometric transformation in this circular geometry. That is what we call navamsha. So that has to be considered because it said, if you go back to the shloka, it said Putratmakara has to be that. And in addition, it talked about Swamshe. That means the what we call the no Vargottama. The Graha should be in its own Amsha. So that concept has also been brought in here. In addition, it says it should be svoche, it should be in uchasthana or exalted. It should be in the swamsha. So if you mathematically, the formula for finding out if the graha is in swamsha is the floor of theta divided by 3.3 divided by 9 should be equal to that, wherever it is found. So similarly, swabha means it should if you divide its longitude by 30 and take the floor function of that, that should correspond to the graha. Shubha drishti is much more complicated to calculate. So these are very not at all easy to compute. So one day I plan to extend the program to analyze that those 459 occurrences of Maharaja Yoga over 200 years and also apply all these rules to see what was the best possible configuration that ever existed. And then we can go and see if there was any Maharaja born in that Maharaja Yoga. But whatever analysis has been done so far, one thing is very clear that they have pointed out some extremely rare and extremely interesting configurations. And these are not simple things like just based on Rashi or Nakshatra or something as simple as that. Right? In fact, Parashara says you also have to look at something called Karakamsha. So, चिन्तयेत् कारकांक्षेव जनुर्लग्नेऽथवा द्विज राजयोगकरौ द्वौ द्वौ स्फुटौ केटौ प्रयत्नतः आत्मकारकपुत्राभ्यां योगमेकं प्रकल्पयेत् तनुपञ्चमनाथाभ्यां तथैव द्विजसत्तमा. So if we have to actually go and write a program to analyze this, it is not simple at all. So it will take a lot of effort, and it's very interesting to do. If people want to take every such rule, every such configuration in Jyotish Shastra that is given and analyze it in this data science approach by applying these probability and statistical understanding. So what is Karakamsha is one step more complex than what we saw earlier. So the Navamsha of Atmakaraka is called Karakamsha. So we saw that If you take the Amsha, which is how far a Graha has advanced within that Rashi, Atmakaraka is that Graha which has the highest Amsha. Now, if you take the Navamsha of that, that is called Karakamsha, and treat that as the ascendant, Karakamsha Lagna. So if you do that, then you should reanalyze all those same things, right? That first and fifth interchange and so on. So if you do this, the occurrences or instances is even less probable. So this has happened only 240 times over those 73,000 days, or the probability is 0.32%. This is the basic probability, that is without considering the additional constraints, additional enhancements in terms of Uchasthana, Swamsha, or Shubhadrushti and all of those. If you do all of that, maybe this kind of a very special Raja Yoga never occurred or occurred only a handful of times over these 200 years. Right? So similarly, there is something called Nicha Bhanga Raja Yoga. I will just conclude after this. Now, this is again, there are multiple definitions of this. So that is the reason why I think the present AI method will not be able to analyze any of these complex concepts. For example, if you just Google for Nichabanga Raja Yoga or ask ChatGPT a question about it, there are multiple definitions available for this. Now, the essentially a graha which is debilitated is called Nicha. It becomes weak, but there is a way to do bhanga for that. So if the wherever it is located, if the graha, the adipati of that is at a kendra sthana from moon, that means it should be at 0, 90, 180 or 270 degrees from the moon, then that is considered Nicha Bhanga Raja Yoga. No, Nietzsche itself happens a lot, but how often does this happen? So I have not yet been able to calculate the probability of this, but we do find that if you look at the horoscopes of many politicians and global leaders who they lose and they keep coming back re-elected and becoming leaders of states and countries and so on, we find that several of them have this Nichabanga Raja Yoga. I will not mention any names here, but those who are interested can look it up. So all of this, the other aspect of validating or verifying all of this is will require real data. So if we had real data of real people, not there are websites and databases of celebrities. Only it will give you only the details of movie actors and political leaders and sports persons and so on. That's not what we need. We need data of common people, real people. For example, if I had the data of 1% of everybody who attended the Mahakumbh, that would have been a wonderful data set. So we need accurate date, time, and place of birth of at least several lakh people, a million people at least. Then we can validate these results. Instead of generating this data set programmatically, right, we will be able to uh, make better conclusions and come to a better understanding of Jyotish Shastra by applying this method. As I said, this is only a sort of a hobby for me. So whenever I find time, I keep doing this. If other people are interested in taking this forward, getting more data and applying this methodology, I think there is really scope for doing many wonderful PhDs in this area, in this new intersection of the approach of data science and an Indian knowledge system such as Jyotish Shastra. So once again, I have not found the need or applied any of the so-called AI ML methods, although these are using large data sets. It's more of a data science approach, not quite AI or ML. Whether this is research, whether this is science, I'm not really concerned about such questions, but sometimes people do ask such questions. So thank you very much for listening to me. And if there are any questions or comments, I'll be very glad to uh, take them.
Sri Gurubhyo Namaha. Sri Gurubhyo Namaha. इदानीम् अस्माकं सविधे पार्श्वे ऑनलाइन माध्यमेन कवि महेश महोदयेन प्रोफेसर कवि महेश महोदयेन उपस्थापितं यद् विषयं वर्तते तत्र पंचांगम अर्थात बर्थ ऑफ टाइम प्लेस अर्थात होरास्कोप द्वारा कथम मानवस्य जीवन फलम यद वर्तते तत् कथम निर्धारणीयं करणीयं तत्र यद निर्धारणं भवति आदौ अस्माभिः किं क्रियते नाम अस्माकं जन्म समयः किम् अस्ति बर्थ टाइम किम् अस्ति बर्थ प्लेस कुत्र अस्ति किमर्थं बर्थ प्लेस अपेक्षते इत्युक्ते लॉन्गिट्यूड एंड एटीट्यूड यद वर्तते प्रत्येक अस्माकं संपूर्ण भारतस्य भिन्नं भिन्नं वर्तते अतएव यदा सनराइज भवति प्रत्येक प्रान्तस्य सनराइज टाइम डिफरेंट डिफरेंट भवति तदर्थमेव पृथक्ता न भवेत् तदर्थं किं क्रियते अस्माभिः अक्षांशः स्वीक्रियते अक्षांश स्वीकरणेन सर्वत्र समानमेव तत्र होरोस्कोप निर्माणं भवति तेन निर्माणं कृत्वा तदर्थम् आदौ किम् अपेक्षते तदर्थमेव कवि महेश महोदयेन उक्तं यत् तिथि वार नक्षत्र योग करणानि अपेक्षितानि भवन्ति तत्र किमर्थम् इत्युक्ते आदौ पंचांग ज्ञानम् अपेक्षते पंचांग ज्ञानं यद् भवति तत्र तिथीनाम् आदौ करणीयं भवति तिथि किं भवति सूर्यचन्द्रयोः सन एंड मून यदा मिलित्वा त्रयोदश अंतरं भवति नाम 13 डिग्री भवति फॉर 24 आवर्स मध्ये 24 आवर्स मध्ये यदा द्वयोः 1 डिग्री नाम द्वादश अंतरं भवति चेत् द्वादश अंतरेण एका तिथि भवति प्रतिपदा पुनः 24 अंतरं भवति चेत् द्वितीया भवति 36 भवति नाम 12 टेबल यदा भवति तेन प्रकारेण 180 डिग्री यदि डिफरेंट भवति चेत् पूर्णिमा भवति 0 डिग्री यदा भवति तदानीम् अमावास्या भवति इति तिथीनां नियमः वर्तते एवमेव वारस्य आदौ शनि गुरु तस्मात् इत्यादि क्रमेण वर्तते पुनः नक्षत्रं भवति 27 नक्षत्र तत्र अश्विनी भरणी कृतिका रोहिणी मृगशिरा आर्द्रा पुनर्वसु पुष्य आहत्य 27 नक्षत्राणि भवन्ति एवमेव यथा 27 नक्षत्राणि तथैव 27 योगानि अपि भवन्ति योगाः कथ्यन्ते तत्र विष्कुम्भः प्रीतिरायुष्मान् सौभाग्यः शोभनस्तथा इति आहत्य 27 योगाः एवमेव सप्तकरणानि भवन्ति ववः वयं बालवकौ लवाख्ये ततो भवेति तल नामधेयं तत्रापि भेदः अस्ति 2 पार्ट्स अस्ति चलकरणं स्थिरकरणम् इत्युक्ते भवति एवं प्रकारेण आदौ आचार्यैः तिथि विषये नाम पंचांग विषये अनन्तरं व्यतिपात महापात वस्तुतः एतेन यद् सम्पादितम् अस्ति तत्र विवाह काले मैरिज यद् भवति तत्र 21 योगाः महादोषकारकाः सन्ति तत्र एकार्गलो दोषाः व्यतिपात क्रांति शाम इत्यादयः ये दोषाः सन्ति महान पातक दोषाः भवन्ति अतएव भास्कराचार्येण सिद्धांत शिरोमणौ आदौरेव वदन्ति पाताधिकारे मासांत पादे प्रथमेन्द बिन्दोः यदा मासारंभ नाम मासान्तः मासारंभः भवति तदानीमेव पातः भवति तद् यः पातः अस्ति सः पातः महापातः अस्ति तत् प्रतिमासे एव भवति तदपि किं भवति द्विविधम् अस्ति एकः क्रांतिपातः द्वितीयः व्यधृतिपातः व्यतिपातः तत्र एकगोले क्रांति साम्ये एकगोले अयन भेदे यदा सूर्यचन्द्रः एकगोले भवति परन्तु अयन भेदता भवति गोल नाम उत्तरगोलः दक्षिणगोलः अयन नाम उत्तरायणं दक्षिणायनं पुनः सिद्धान्ते बहु तत्र पाठ इत्यादिकं परिभाषा इत्यादिकं वर्तते तत्तु अत्र कालाभावात् व्याख्यानं न भवति केवलम् अतएव व्यतिपातः व्यधृतिपाते यदा भवति तदानीं शुभकार्यादिकं न करणीयं दोषकारकः भवति तथैव विवाहे अपि एकार्गल इत्यादि यद् 21 दोषाः सन्ति तद् दोषाः निराकरणीयाः अनन्तरम् एकार्गल दोष विषये अपि एतेन एकार्गल अनन्तरं रश्मि विषये अपि प्रकाशितम् अस्माकम् अनन्तरं योग विषये बहवः योगाः सन्ति तत्र राजयोगाः महाराजयोगाः इत्यादि आहत्य बहवः योगाः सन्ति किन्तु योग निर्धारणे आदौरेव द्रष्टव्यं भवति यद् अस्माभिः प्रतिदिनं यद् भवति तत्र होरास्कोप मध्ये 12 लग्नानि 24 आवर्स मध्ये 12 लग्नानि भवन्ति लग्ने तदपि लग्ने इच लग्नं 2 आवर्स भवन्ति किन्तु तथा न भवति त्रिकोणमिति रीत्या तत्र सर्वेषां ग्रहाणां कोणीये यद् अन्तरम् अस्ति तद् भिन्नं भिन्नं भवति तेन कारणेन किं भवति तत्र लग्न प्रमाणं किञ्चित् 2 hours अधिकमपि भवति, किञ्चित् न्यूनमपि भवति। तेन कारणेन अहोरात्रे एकस्मिन् अहोरात्रे नाम 24 hours मध्ये 12 लग्नानि भवन्ति। लग्नम् आधारीकृत्य तत्र अस्माभिः तत्र फलाफल निर्धारणं क्रियते। यथा लग्नं मूलं क्रियाफलं। यदि लग्नं प्रबलम् अस्ति चेत् भवतां कुण्डली अपि फलमपि सम्यक् भवति। तदनन्तरं पुत्रकारकः इत्यादि सर्वेषां कृते लग्नमेव भवति। लग्नम् आधारीकृत्य एव अस्माभिः फलनिर्णयः क्रियते। इत्यादृशः सर्वमपि एतैः आचार्यैः प्रतिपादितं तेव प्रतिपादित्वा विरमामि। धन्यवादः। आचार्याणां कृते धन्यवादः समर्प्यते। संक्षेपेण वक्तव्यमासीत्, अतः एव तत्र व्याख्यानस्य धन्यवादः।
धन्यवादः।
Thank you, sir. Thanks for the briefing. Next, we will follow with the felicitation of the speakers who have enlightened us in today's session. I request. Uh, okay. Let us have an online felicitation for the sir. Sir, we are really very happy to have you and for the session what you shared with us.
Thank you.
I request RJ Ramasri Madam to felicitate Sri Kulkarni Sir, Mr. Nikhil and Akhil for their deliverance of the speech. Sir.
Sir, we are extremely thankful for you, and we want to extend the verbal felicitation because online. So, if you want, we are sharing some book as a felicitation token. We will send you by post.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
On behalf of Kavi Mahesh Sir, Kulkarni Sir is going to take the felicitation things. I request RJ Ramasri Madam to felicitate Kulkarni Sir, Mr. Nikhil and Akhil. ఒక్కరికి మీరేమండి మేడం. I request Sridhar Sir to felicitate Akhil. I request Chandrasekharan Sir to felicitate Nikhil. What the session? What the session part which we missed in the morning session, now the Mr. Akhil is going to demonstrate it, followed by we'll go with the lunch, and again we are having one more session followed by the validatory session. Thank you.